Following program is intended for listeners who are blind, have low vision, or another print disability that makes reading, holding a book, or turning a page difficult or impossible. The content is copyrighted by the respective publishers. For more information, please visit us on the web at nfradioreading.org.
Your Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service now presents a reading of articles and features from the Buffalo News for Wednesday, January 28, 2026. Your readers today are
Larry Beenan
and Linda Ranella. Starting with the weather report. Mostly cloudy and frigid today with snow showers, a high of 14. A couple of snow showers tonight, low of 7. Flurries tomorrow, a high of 12 and a low of -4. For Friday, a little snow in the morning, high of 8, low of 2. Saturday, cloudy and bitterly cold, high 13, low of 5. For Sunday, clouds and sun, very cold, high of 15, low of 6. For Monday, a little snow in the afternoon, a high of 20, low of 17. And for Tuesday, a little morning snow, a high of 23 and a low of 13. Sunrise was at 7:34 a.m. and sunset tonight is at 5:23 p.m. Larry?
Thank you, Linda. Our opening story. Bills elevate Brady, betting on continuity. Allen's comfort level with coach likely factored into team's decision. In the end, the Buffalo Bills didn't go far to find their next head coach. After conducting 9 interviews in the 8 days since they fired Sean McDermott, the Bills landed on a candidate from within their own building, agreeing to a 5-year contract with offensive coordinator Joe Brady on Tuesday to become the 19th head coach in franchise history. Brady, 36, has called plays for quarterback Josh Allen and the Bills' offense since November 2023, when McDermott fired Ken Dorsey and promoted Brady from quarterbacks coach. The Bills fired McDaniel last week after 9 seasons on the job, 2 days after a crushing loss to the Denver Broncos in the divisional round of the AFC playoffs. Team owner Terry Pegula and general manager Brandon Beane, who was promoted last week to president of football operations, led the search to find McDermott's replacement. Pegula's daughter, Laura, and assistant general managers Brian Gain and Terrence Gray were also part of the search committee. So too was Allen, who sat in on some of the interviews. The franchise quarterback became the NFL MVP last season under Brady. It's a good bet that continuity and Allen's comfort level with Brady factored heavily into the team's decision. The Bills' offense ranked 4th this season in points per game, 28.5, and yards per game, 376.3. Running back James Cook became the first Buffalo player to win the NFL rushing title since O.J. Simpson in 1976. Allen totaled 39 touchdowns, and he is an MVP finalist for the 3rd time in his 8-season career. Buffalo also scored 57 points in 2 playoff games, capped by its 33-30 season-ending loss to the Broncos. Joe, I'm so thankful for him and his whole team, his offense. Tight end Dawson Knox said the day after the season ended. So much for him as a coordinator and as a man. We can feel that love he has for us, not only as football players, but as men too, off the field and how our families are doing. But the way he had this offense running, man, there was no game we felt like we were out of. We were down double digits at halftime going into the 4th quarters, and we went back out there and won the game. He did an incredible job every single game, giving us every chance to win possible, Knox said. Selfishly, I'd love to have him back. I'd love to say he's a terrible coach so no one else will hire him, but that's not the truth. Hopefully he's back next year. But we definitely want the best for him, and I'm very thankful for my time with him. Knox got his wish. Brady interviewed with the Dolphins, Raiders, Falcons, Ravens, and Cardinals this month for their head coaching vacancies. He had second interviews with the Raiders and Ravens, an indication he was a finalist for both of those jobs. But the Bills decided keeping Brady was the best decision for their own franchise. 7 of the 9 candidates the Bills interviewed came from an offensive background. Beane was asked last week whether the team planned to pair Allen with an offensive-minded head coach. The reasoning for that is sound. If that coach succeeds and the offense continues to function at a high level, the Bills don't have to worry about another team poaching their offensive coordinator. I think we've seen where guys have been excellent play callers, but they've got to the head coach seat and they couldn't handle the adversity, the conflict management being said. It's a CEO job, it really is. A lot of your time as a head coach or a GM gets taken away from me scouting, watching players, or a coach and their scheming X's and O's. So we've got to make sure we get the leadership, the CEO part. A league source told the News that the CEO part of Brady's interview was a home run, and his vision for how the organization will be structured was considered exceptional. As a known commodity, Brady should have a level of alignment between the coaching staff and player personnel that might not have existed with a hire from outside the organization. Brady's first order of business will be to build out his staff, starting with the job he vacated at offensive coordinator. Most of the assistant coaches under McDermott remain in place with the exceptions of offensive line coach Aaron Kromer, who plans to retire, and special teams coordinator Chris Tabor, who left to take the same job with the Dolphins. The biggest question for Brady regarding the coaching staff will be whom to keep from McDermott's staff. Brady's most important call will be what to do with defensive coordinator Bobby Babich. A report from ESPN on Tuesday afternoon identified Broncos defensive pass coordinator Jim Leonhard as a leading candidate to become the Bills' defensive coordinator. That would point to Babich's departure, although the move is not yet official. In the Bills' 7 playoff games with Brady as the play caller, they've averaged 28.4 points and 376 yards. During that span, Allen completed 70.2% of his passes for 1,481 yards with 12 touchdowns and 2 interceptions. He rushed for 350 yards and 7 touchdowns. In 2024, the Bills averaged 359.1 yards per game and were third in next-gen stats expected to points added EPA per play. Their 62 total touchdowns were tied for second most in the NFL, and they became the first team in league history to have 30-plus receiving and 30-plus passing touchdowns in the same season. Buffalo scored 30-plus points 12 times during the regular season as Allen threw 12 fewer interceptions than in 2023, and Cook tied for the NFL lead in rushing touchdowns with 16. The Bills went 6-1 in the regular season after Brady took over in 2023 as interim offensive coordinator, scoring 27.0 points per game en route to winning the AFC East. He's going to let you know he cares about you, that he believes in you. Wide receiver Khalil Shakir said of Brady before the 2025 season began. When a coach tells you that plenty of times over and over again, as a player you start to believe it and go out there and just excel. Brady's promotion to head coach is the latest stop in a meteoric rise through the coaching ranks from a low-level graduate assistant at Penn State, where he was just 10 years ago. Brady has never had a head coach at any level. He joined the Bills as a quarterbacks coach in 2022. Previously, he spent less than 2 seasons as the Carolina Panthers offensive coordinator. Brady rose to prominence in 2019 when he helped LSU and quarterback Joe Burrow won a national championship as the Tigers' passing game coordinator. He won the Broyles Award as the nation's top assistant coach during his lone season at LSU. Brady joined the Tigers from the New Orleans Saints, where he was an assistant offensive under current Broncos head coach Sean Payton. A native of Pembroke Pines, Florida, Brady and his wife Lauren have 2 children, a son Jordan and daughter Logan. Brady graduated from William & Mary in 2013 with a double major in process management and consulting, along with kinesiology and health sciences. He earned a master's degree from Penn State in educational leadership in 2018. Linda?
Thank you, Larry. Sex abuse survivors' testimony is raw. This is written by Jay Tokaz, the news staff reporter. Gary Astridge leaned across the bench Tuesday morning to hand Judge Carl L. Buckey a copy of a photograph of himself when he was a 7-year-old boy growing up Catholic in the Black Rock neighborhood. He then handed another copy of the same picture to Bishop Michael W. Fisher, who also was seated inside a 9th floor courtroom of the Robert H. Jackson U.S. Courthouse. "This is who's talking. I'm speaking for little Gary," said Astridge. As a child, Astridge couldn't talk about the horrific sexual abuses he said a priest inflicted upon him between the ages of 7 and 11. He buried the nightmarish rapes and molestations in the back of his psyche for decades, only to have the trauma manifest itself in school misbehavior and later alcoholism. But at age 69, here Astridge was, all 6 feet 5 inches of him, in a black suit, crisp white shirt and dark tie, explaining to Bucky and Fisher some of the raw and painful details of the abuse and expressing it with the calm and composure of a seasoned litigator. Astridge was among 20 sex abuse claimants in the Buffalo Diocese nearly 6-year-old Chapter 11 bankruptcy, who provided survivor statements in court Tuesday. Fisher sat and listened for nearly 6 hours alongside Charles Murray, an attorney for the diocese. Bucky, who was presiding over the diocese Chapter 11 case, also said little during the proceedings, aside from some opening remarks in which he said that due process in the American justice system unquestionably includes the opportunity to be heard. For the court, he added, it is time to listen. Victims expressed plenty of anger as well as heartache over the loss of the innocence and promise of youth and the shredding of familial bonds and friendships due to life-altering abuses. Many of the testimonies were disturbing and included graphic accounts of rape, oral sodomy, and other criminal sexual acts forced upon children. Greg Seidens, 66, tearfully described how he had grown to trust the Reverend George Zimpher, a priest at Saints Peter and Paul Church in Williamsville, when Seidens was 14 and living at a residential facility for troubled youth. Seidens alleged that Zimpher betrayed that trust by pulling down his pants and rubbing his penis, abuse that only got worse over time. He paused several times, at one point turned to Bucky and said, "I'm sorry for crying." Seidens said he suffers from post-traumatic stress disorder and seizures. He spent 23 years in prison, where he was raped and beaten. He still has rage and anger issues to the point where he sometimes destroys his personal property. "I want to be normal, but the church took that away from me," he said. "I want the church to take responsibility for what you did to me. Please." When he was finished, Seidens stepped down from the witness stand and broke down in the arms of his lawyer, Paul Barr. Barr, who represents dozens of clients with claims against the diocese, briefly recounted his own story of abuse at the hands of Reverend Michael Freeman. Barr alleged Freeman locked him in a room when he was a teenager to give him a bogus medical exam that involved touching his genitals. "What we're doing here today is taking back our power," he said. Given his own history, Barr said he was reluctant to take on childhood sex abuse cases because each time he heard the details of a new case, it would bring him back to the moment when he was trapped in a room with a beast. Barr said he's already lost 2 of his clients who had diocese claims. Both died in 2021 due to complications from their alcohol dependency. He has another client who is 93, and he urged Bucky to speed the bankruptcy along to completion. "What are you going to do so that I don't lose another client before this case ends?" he asked. Kevin Braun's choked-up testimony brought several people in the courtroom to tears as he discussed the loss of his son Patrick, who took his own life in 2019. Patrick's death happened within a day of reading his father's letter of being abused by a priest more than 40 years ago, and Brun said he continues to blame himself. Brun said he had accidentally left a letter he wrote to the diocese out in the open. It was Brun's graphic account of abuse he said was perpetrated by the Reverend Arthur Smith when Brun was 16 and on a trip with a priest and others in Washington, D.C. Patrick came across the letter and read it, and he told his father that he would get justice, Brun recounted. The next day, police knocked on the door of Brun's West Seneca home to tell him and his wife their son had died. "I fear there will never be closure for me personally," he said. Michael F. Wallen Jr. Michael F. Wallen Jr. was the first survivor to give remarks on Tuesday, a symbolic recognition of his role in breaking the dam on clergy sex abuse within the diocese. Wallen's 2018 news conference outside the Catholic Center on a cold February morning helped set in motion a whole series of other events. The priest's admission to molesting probably dozens of children, a flood of other childhood sexual abuse victims stepping forward to report their abuse, an Attorney General's office investigation into the Buffalo Diocese, hundreds of Child Victims Act lawsuits accusing clergy of abuse, and a diocese bankruptcy filing in 2020 under the weight of all that litigation. To the survivors, I want them to know it was never your fault, he said. Several speakers took a moment to thank their attorneys and other survivors, as well as Bucky. Brune even thanked Fisher for having the guts to be here, while at the same time criticizing former Bishop Richard J. Malone and Auxiliary Bishop Edward Gross as a disgrace to the vow they took because of their handling of the diocese abuse scandal. Some made special mention of Siobhan O'Connor, the former secretary to Malone, who leaked internal documents on abuse to the media that helped shed more light on the diocese scandal and led to Malone's resignation. O'Connor was among about 65 people in the courtroom listening to the survivor statements. 20 additional survivor statements are scheduled to be given in court on Wednesday, and 40 more on February 25th and 26th. Larry?
Thank you, Linda. You're listening to a reading of today's Buffalo News on your Niagara Frontier Radio reading service. The time is 16 minutes after the hour. Bitter cold temps will delay opening of Amherst Costco. August is new target as difficult conditions hamper construction. Costco fans, mark your calendars. The warehouse chain's Amherst store is set to open in early August. That's according to an update provided to town officials. Amherst Supervisor Sean A. Levin told the Buffalo News on Tuesday morning. The project manager told the town's building department during a recent visit that the region's extended deep freeze has delayed the anticipated completion of construction, Levin said. The challenging weather over the last month has put them significantly behind, he said. Construction on the highly anticipated Costco wholesale store on Ridgely Road began in November. The company's standard warehouse can take a few as 110 days from the start of construction to store opening, according to the website of MG2, a design firm based in Seattle that is working with Costco on the Amherst store. However, the typical time frame doesn't take into account weather-related delays, and January in particular has seen considerable snowfall and frigid temperatures locally. Jessica O'Neill, Levin's chief of staff, said the cold weather affects how well concrete cures. For example, it's not that they weren't prepared for it, Levin said, but I don't think they were prepared for, 0 degrees for a standard week. So they're pushing the timeline back to early August. Costco still hadn't confirmed the Amherst location, though a sign at the entrance to the property says Costco Whalehouse. The project's developer, Benderson Development, has said it is unable to comment on the store's identity. Local fans of the discount warehouse chain have awaited Costco's opening since town officials announced plans for the local store in 2022. Costco doesn't comment on future stores until they are listed on a company webpage dedicated to upcoming warehouse openings. That page, which lists stores expected to open through March, doesn't name the Amherst warehouse. Town officials had expected a spring opening for the Amherst warehouse prior to the recent weather-related delays. The store is set to open at the former site of Tony Romo's restaurant behind Benderson. The Boulevard Shopping Center, a Dick's House of Sports store, is nearing completion at the same location. The membership-based warehouse club Costco Whalehouse is known for its wide selection of quality merchandise, its affordable private label Kirkland signature products, and its inflation-proof $1.50 hot dog and beverage combo. The closest current Costco stores are located in Rochester and Niagara Falls, Ontario. The 168,000 square foot warehouse club in Amherst will cost $25 million to build, according to papers filed with the town, not counting the adjacent Costco fueling station. Linda?
Thank you, Larry. Today in history, on this date, in 1547, England's King Henry VIII died at age 55. He was succeeded by his 9-year-old son, Edward VI. In 1813, the novel Pride and Prejudice by Jane Austen was first published anonymously in London. In 1922, 98 people were killed when the roof of the Knickerbocker Theater in Washington, D.C. collapsed under the weight of nearly 2 feet of snow. In 1956, Elvis Presley made his first national TV appearance on Stage Show, a CBS program hosted by Tommy and Jimmy Dorsey. In 1980, 6 U.S. diplomats who had avoided being taken hostage at their embassy in Tehran, flew out of Iran with the help of Canadian diplomats. The events were later dramatized in the film Argo. In 1985, to raise funds for famine relief in Ethiopia, the supergroup USA for Africa recorded the song We Are the World. In 1986, a Space Shuttle Challenger exploded 73 seconds after liftoff from Cape Canaveral, Florida, killing all 7 crew members, including schoolteacher Christy McAuliffe. In 2011, protesters opposed to Hosni Mubarak's nearly 30-year rule of Egypt seized the streets of Cairo. Hundreds of protesters would be killed in ensuing days in attempts to crush the uprising before Mubarak stepped down as president that February. Larry?
Thank you, Linda. The local Buffalo News editorial. Welcome news. Ryan is right to pick up pace on fixing city's stalled environmental priorities. It looks like we're finally going to find out what happened to Buffalo's tree money. That and other pressing environmental concerns are near the top of Mayor Sean Ryan's to-do list, as he told the News' Mackenzie Schumann in a recent interview. Yes, the city is severely strapped for cash. We've heard this year's fiscal deficit could be as high as $24 million. But money for planting trees, better sewer infrastructure, removal of lead paint, and other initiatives that could go a long way in making Buffalo a healthier place doesn't have to come from city coffers. This is the type of funding that is regularly supplied by state and, until recently, federal sources, as it should be. But how has Buffalo spent the money that has come in for these important projects? That's the question, and it's one Ryan and his team will have to figure out as they attempt to pick up the pace, a pace that on trees, lead, and sewers has been glacial. It was exciting to hear in September 2023 that the Forest Service's $1 billion urban and community forestry program had promised $8 million to Buffalo's $5.2 million to Erie County and $255,884 to the village of Lancaster for tree planting. But it was all downhill from there, at least for Buffalo. Word came that the money was frozen and reimbursements could not be guaranteed. Then last May, the U.S. Forest Service said it has begun making payments for work done under existing contracts and agreements. Erie County and Lancaster have planted trees under their agreements. Buffalo has not, though it did commit up to $656,460 for the University of Buffalo to do outreach and education. What's needed are trees on the ground, especially for communities that lack tree cover during the hottest days of summer. Ryan seems on board, as he stated, in the last 2 decades the city has really pulled out of the urban forestry business, so we're going to get back into it. Ryan is justifiably unsatisfied with the city's progress on sewer overflows. Who wouldn't be? Woodlawn Beach was rated unsafe for swimming 37 days out of 113 tested in 2024. That's a direct result of inadequate wastewater infrastructure, which causes raw sewage to be discharged into area waterways. It's obviously a problem that all of Western New York's municipal sewer systems must address, but Buffalo is clearly wanting, or it wouldn't have been sued by New York's Department of Environmental Conservation with a settlement requiring the city to upgrade its system by 2040. That's not good enough for Ryan, who stated we have to set a new goal post, and that new goalpost has to be, we want to swim in the city of Buffalo. We want Buffalo kids to take swimming lessons at the Outer Harbor. Good for him. A city shouldn't have to be sued into fixing its sewers. Ryan also affirms that state money is available to help get this done. Governor Kathy Hochul confirmed that by putting money for sewer construction near the top of the state wish list, if Buffalo gets this funding, Ryan's job will be to make sure it gets spent appropriately. Another urgent health priority is Buffalo's persistent failure to aggressively tackle lead paint contamination in homes. With lack of proper inspections an underlying factor, after instituting a proactive rental inspection law, children especially can suffer lifelong damage from lead exposure. That money could have prevented such exposure in a significant number of Buffalo homes. Ryan's plan is to follow a model that has been successful in Rochester. Fine, as long as better progress is made. These are significant challenges for a new mayoral administration that must also attack dire fiscal conditions. So far, Ryan demonstrates he has the ideas and will to meet them.
Thank you, Larry. The editorial cartoons, the first one is by John Deering of Creator Syndicate, and it shows two ICE employees, full mask and all that. Anyhow, they have broken down a door to a house, and they have encountered the woman of the house, and she's very scared. And the one man says, "What's for breakfast?" And the overall language is, the ICE memo allows agents to enter homes without a warrant. And the second cartoon is by Al Goodwin, also of Creator Syndicate. This is about Gavin Newsom. And it says, "Meanwhile, in Davos, the U.S. is a wreck. You want democracy with Trump? That's pathetic. Quit being complicit. He's destroyed alliances. Are you even listening to me?" And then a light bulb goes off and he says, "I know, more props," as he digs his head into the storage trunk that he has there. It says Trump in 2028. It says Gavin in 2028. And it's got a light bulb and a bullhorn and crown and a globe and a COVID mask, all sorts of props in the truck. Larry?
Thank you, Linda. Everybody's column. Kensington wreaked havoc in Cheektowaga. I have always considered people from this area pretty well educated for the most part. That is, except geography. It seems most people are of the opinion that the Kensington Expressway is located only in the city of Buffalo. In fact, it cuts right through the town of Cheektowaga, all the way to the airport. And when I was 8, it came to my neighborhood. It tore up my neighborhood exactly as it did on the east side. All our ball diamonds were destroyed. We were cut off from our friends on the other side. We had to deal with a biblical plague of rats dislodged from their homes by the construction. I wouldn't know about problems from car exhaust because no one has ever done a study. It seems no political leaders care about the residents of the town I grew up in. Please remember that the construction of this highway extended well beyond Buffalo. It affected more than just the black residents of the east side. This from Edward Lawrence of Lancaster.
Thank you, Larry. Firing of coach brings too much second guessing. I keep seeing everyone on TV, from the man on the street to the experts, commenting on Allen, McDermott, Bean, and Pegula, but who really knows? I don't know either, but I'm presuming that Terry Pegula is no dummy. First of all, Brandon Bean's picks come with input from scouts, coaches, probably Josh Allen, and if Bean was promoted while Sean McDermott was fired, the greatest input was most likely from the head coach because it's his team. It's sad because we like Sean and the team culture he promoted, but he's in charge, so he's the one who has to fall on the sword. Secondly, about Allen losing the game, give me a break. He got the Bills 30 points. That's 30 or more points for the 10th time this season, most of them coming from behind in the second half after scrapping the game plans and putting on his cape. And by this time, I'm sure that every Bills fan with access to the internet has seen what he really had: only one interception. And this is written by Dominic Verso of Williamsville. Larry?
Thank you, Linda. McDermott was not the problem with Bills. The jarring termination of Bills head coach Sean McDermott is a reminder sometimes nice guys finish last. He brought success and a positive culture to our franchise when we needed it most. But I guess averaging 12-plus wins in the last 6 seasons gets you fired. The problem wasn't the head coach, it's the general manager. The roster isn't good enough. Since drafting Josh Allen, our GM has selected only 2 that have made the Pro Bowl. Free agency? Equally miserable. Poor signings have led to ongoing salary cap problems. We've never recovered from the Von Miller signing, $120 million plus off-field issues. Crippled by poor salary cap management and subpar drafts, Bean still called it a Super Bowl roster. Really? Allen masks a lot of the ugliness. With no roster depth and no cap space, in-season injuries are met with street free agents. Trade deadlines are met with crickets. Whose fault is that? McDermott deserved better. He was force-fed an average roster and coached players up. He was cut from the Buffalo mold. Never placing blame, he'd offer after a loss that it wasn't to our standard. After a win, stay humble and hungry. Forget football. These are great life lessons. He led the team through a pandemic, snowstorms, and Damar Hamlin's life-threatening event with professionalism and dignity. Through faith, family, strong locker room chemistry, and on-field success, McDermott represented Buffalo in a very positive light. We should feel very lucky to have had him, and I feel we fired the wrong guy. This from Steve Ulrich of Amherst.
Thank you, Larry. You're listening to a reading of today's Buffalo News on Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service. The time is 9:30. Some opinion columns. This one is Another Voice, and it's written by Paul D. Maurer, who is Marketing Director for Diversion Management, and it's about license plate readers. A solution to problem of uninsured drivers. There is another way to lower Western New York insurance rates while reducing the cost of insurance and benefiting the underserved. The Reverend James A. Lewis rightly brings up fraud, Another Voice, in January 25th, as a major factor in our high insurance rates in the state. What hasn't been mentioned is a nagging problem that can be eliminated and that would make a real difference: uninsured drivers. There is a new solution to this problem being implemented that also seeks a better crime-stopping method. It is a non-invasive, respectful solution. Here's how it works. License plate readers, LPRs, are provided at no charge to law enforcement. Mounted on poles, their primary purpose is to identify drug trafficking, carjacking, stolen cars, and kidnapping in assisting law enforcement. Serious crimes like the deadly shootings at Brown University and MIT are resolved by this approach daily, all over the United States. The currently uninsured, especially poor and underserved, can benefit most from an element that also supports insurance status and enables a solution that is far less expensive, requires no court appearance or points, and provides a respectful path forward. Revenues, which stay local, can be used to help support premium payments and finally deliver a real answer. And in these days of heightened conflict between officers and perpetrators, this is a non-contract solution. Only law enforcement gets to view the license plate images, and only when compared with the uninsured database. The program also makes for safer drivers by requiring a safe driving course for those identified as uninsured. The owners pay an online fee to get back in good standing after insuring their vehicle. The fee, considerably less than a fine for being pulled over by an officer, can be used to bolster law enforcement needs in the community. A portion of the fee goes to the company that installs them. Only the lower rear license plate is seen, so there is no chance of profiling. This is called diversion. It puts first-time non-felony infractions through online adjudication rather than clogging up prosecutor time and the courts. The program, administered by the police by a company called Diversion Management, has its roots in Western New York. Larry?
Thank you, Linda. Following is from Robert Burgess. Spending is hot, saving not so much. Something has to give. The U.S. government released some long-delayed data last week that seemed to prove true the cliche about never betting against American consumers. According to the Bureau of Economic Analysis, spending increased 0.3% in both October and November when adjusted for inflation. The results were in line with the average monthly gain over the past 3 years, which may lead some to falsely conclude that perhaps Americans aren't as angry and upset with the high cost of living as the surveys and polls suggest. A close look at the data shows that households are using a greater portion of their incomes to finance consumption. That can be seen in the declining savings rate, which tumbled from 5.5% in April to 3.5% in November. Not including the wild gyrations during the COVID years, you have to go back to 2008 to find the last time the saving rate was so low. The saving rate was near 7% just before COVID hit. The impressive strength in spending masks a more troubling reality. EY Parthenon senior economist Lydia Bossour wrote in a research note, "Beneath the surface, many families are grappling with depleted savings and the challenges of fewer job opportunities and slower income growth, which is eroding their purchasing power. This can't go on much longer. Consumers will eventually pull back on their spending. probably sooner rather than later. Consumption accounts for 2/3 of the gross domestic product. The Conference Board reported in late December that its gauge of consumer confidence fell for a fifth straight month. Consumers' write-in responses on factors affecting the economy continued to be led by references to prices and inflation, tariffs and trade, and politics. Dana Peterson, chief economist at the Conference Board, said in a statement accompanying the results. However, December saw increases in mentions of immigration, war, and topics related to personal finances, including interest rates, taxes, and income, banks, and insurance. Despite the White House calling concerns about the lack of affordability a hoax, the government is scrambling to come up with solutions. Any measures that would make a real difference need to be signed into law by Congress, which is unlikely during a midterm election year, and with Republicans holding just a razor-thin majority in both the House and Senate. Although some Trump administration officials, such as Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent, has been talking up the prospect of gigantic refunds this tax season, the reality is more nuanced. Economists at Morgan Stanley expect individual tax refunds to be $40 billion to $70 billion higher in 2026 than in 2025, or around an average of $3,500. But it will be middle to high income and older consumers who will benefit most. The Federal Reserve Bank of New York's latest quarterly report on household debt and credit showed that around 4.5% of debt was at least 30 days delinquent in the July to September period, the most since the first quarter of 2020. As Bloomberg News noted at the time, the figures suggest U.S. households, especially younger ones, continue to grapple with financial challenges resulted from high interest rates, weak hiring trends, and ongoing inflation. One of the biggest questions in economics has been how U.S. consumption has remained stronger than most anyone predicted in the face of elevated debt levels, faster inflation, and weak job growth. The BEA data Thursday showing a rapidly declining savings rate may be a big part of the answer, just not one that foreshadows continued strength in the months ahead.
Thank you, Larry. Some business and financial news. Jobless rate holds steady at 4% despite lag in hiring. The Buffalo-Niagara region's unemployment rate held steady at 4% during December as jobless levels remain relatively low even as hiring remains subdued. The State Labor Department on Tuesday said the region's unemployment rate didn't change from November's 4% and was only slightly above the 3.9% rate in December 2024. The December unemployment report showed little change in the makeup of the region's workforce since November, extending a period of relatively low joblessness that has been in place since the pandemic-related lockdowns lifted. The number of people without jobs changed little since November, and the local workforce, which had grown during November, shrank a little. The unemployment rate has hovered between 4% and 4.1% for the past 3 months. The report comes days after a separate Labor Department report indicated that hiring had slowed during December, but did not reverse the hiring surge that brought more than 3,000 new jobs to the region during November. That November hiring binge was accompanied by a jump in the number of workers who held jobs or were actively looking for one, which economists interpreted as a sign of resiliency in the region's job market. The December jobs report and Tuesday's unemployment numbers indicate that the region did not take a step back last month, although the upward momentum also did not continue. If you have a significant increase in the labor force, there's going to be some kind of lag there in people finding jobs, especially in people finding the type of jobs they're looking for, said Timothy Glass, the Labor Department's regional economist in Buffalo. Over the past year, local workforce has grown by almost 16,000 people, but it is still below pre-pandemic levels by about 6,000, as the COVID-19 lockdown convinced many older workers to retire, possibly earlier than they had planned. At the same time, the region's stagnant population and modest job growth, which has not been robust enough to regain all the jobs lost during the pandemic lockdown, has kept the pool of available workers tight, leading to low jobless levels that have been in place for several years. Instead, the region's job market has shown an ability to absorb new workers as they join the labor force fairly quickly. Over the past year, the labor pool has grown by 15,900 people, but most of them, 14,600 in all, have been able to find jobs, keeping unemployment stable. Larry?
Thank you, Linda. Car buying is stressing budgets like never before. Melissa Dickerson never imagined she would end up with a monthly car payment of $1,100, especially for a used car. Then her son wrecked her Acura. Fortunately, he was okay, but when she went shopping for a replacement SUV, Dickerson, a paralegal from Ording, Washington, soon discovered it was going to cost her far more than the $400 a month she had been paying. It was quite a shock, said Dickerson, who also had to extend the loan to 72 months or 6 years and a loan with a 15% interest rate. The high monthly car payments, coupled with other changes in her household budget, including higher rate, caused Dickerson to fall deep into debt. Now I'm relying on the credit cards to live, to pay for things that I can't pay now, she said. Food, the stuff you need, the electric bill, phone bill. You think you'll be able to pay them off next month, and then you can't. Record high car prices coupled with high interest rates are leading to huge monthly car payments for many Americans. A record share of Americans, more than 20%, agreed to pay more than $1,000 per month for a new car loan at the end of the year, according to car sales site Edmunds. High monthly car payments are putting tremendous stress on household budgets already struggling to deal with the higher cost of living. But many Americans need a car for everyday use, like commuting to work and grocery shopping. Regardless of economic conditions like inflation, everybody needs a car. They're going to go out and get a car, said Satan Merchant, leader of TransUnion Automotive and Mortgage Business. They're going to spend, so the payments are going to stay elevated. The average used car payment is $538 a month, according to TransUnion, which nearly equals the average payment on a new car in 2019. Meanwhile, the average new car payment has increased by $300, or more than 35% since then, to $769. Ravi Stevens II paid $80,000 in 2022 for a Ram 2500 pickup, and he planned to use in business he was starting. The $1,019 a month 7-year loan he took out was more than double his previous car loan for a 2013 Camaro. It didn't cause him too much trouble at first. I was confident that I could handle the loan. But unfortunately, things took a turn, said Stevens, who lives in Aurora, Colorado. Maybe about a year ago, it started to be a bit more of a burden. So I was having to come up with a bit more money outside my job in order to sustain it. As you know, the last few years have been tough for a lot of Americans. Dickerson and Stevens are both current on their car loans and working with National Debt Relief to reduce their credit card balances. Typically, car loans are the last thing Americans are late to pay out of fear their vehicle could be repossessed. But as costs rise across the board, a record percentage of borrowers are falling behind on payments. Car loans falling 60 days or more delinquent hit 1.45% in the third quarter, according to TransUnion. That may not sound like much, but it's nearly 40% higher than just 3 years ago. Experts say there's little chance payments will fall anytime soon. Average car prices currently around $50,000 will likely stay elevated. Automakers are dealing with rising costs from tariffs on imported cars and parts, as well as the cutting of production on cheaper models. Interest rates, which affect the rate on auto loans, are starting to come down, but the average car loan rate is not declining nearly as fast.
Thank you, Larry. Southwest launches assigned seating. Southwest airline passengers made their final boarding time scrambles for seats on Monday as the carrier prepared to end the open seating system that distinguished it from other airlines for more than half a century. Starting today, customers on Southwest flights will have assigned seats and the option of paying more to get the preferred seat closer to the front of the plane or seats with extra legroom. The airline began selling tickets shaped by the new policy in July. Here's what travelers can expect as Southwest does away with another of its signature features and becomes more like other airlines. Under the open seat system, Southwest customers could check in starting exactly 24 hours before departure to secure places in boarding lines at departure gates. Early check-ins were placed in the coveted A boarding group, essentially guaranteeing they would find an open window or aisle seat. Others landed in B or C, the likelihood of only middle seats being available rising the longer they waited to check in. The open seating arrangement became less democratic over time, however, as Southwest started allowing passengers to pay extra for spots near the front of the line. An 8-group boarding structure is replacing the find-your-own-seat scrum. Instead of numbered metal columns at departure gates, passengers will file through 2 alternating lanes once it's time for their group to board. Southwest is selling tickets at fares with different seating choices, including standard seats assigned at check-in or paid preferred and extra legroom seats selected at booking. For certain flights, passengers also will have the option of paying for priority boarding beginning 24 hours before departure. Newly designed boarding passes will show seat assignments and boarding groups according to Southwest. A reservation made for 9 or fewer people, including families, will assign those passengers to the same boarding group. Southwest says the boarding groups are based on seat location, fare class, loyalty tier status, and the airline's credit card rewards benefits. Passengers who purchase seats with extra legroom will be placed in groups 1 to 2. Customers with premium fares and the airline's most loyal travelers will also have access to preferential seats and earlier boarding, the carrier said, while those in basic fares will likely be placed in groups 6 to 8. With the switch to assigned seating also comes a revision of the airline's policy for customers who need extra room. Under the new rule, also effective today, travelers who do not fit within a single seat's armrests will be required to purchase an additional seat in advance. Larry?
Thank you, Linda. From Business Briefly, Fed expected to hold interest rates steady. Washington. After 2 weeks of intense political and legal scrutiny, the Federal Reserve will seek to make this week's meeting about interest rates as straightforward and uneventful as possible, though President Trump probably still won't like the result. The central bank's interest rate setting committee is almost certain to keep its key short-term rate unchanged at about 3.6% after 3 straight quarter-point cuts last year. Fed Chair Jerome Powell said after December's meeting that they were well positioned to wait and see how the economy evolves before making any further moves.
Thank you, Larry. As part of our newspaper reading, we now present the day's death listings. If you need further information on any of these names, call us at 716-821-5555. That's 716-821-5555. Arena, Peter A. Bonetsky, Robert. Brenner, Merwin J. Jerry. Kolafranceschi, Lida M. Ne Orsini. Daly, Ne Duby. Patricia E. Edwards, Jonas. Folga, Lucy M. Nabanis. Haggerty, Elizabeth Ann. Johnson, Russell L. Masser, Christopher. Moeller, Robert A. and Mary Ann Nemanka. Probst, Jane Carol Meisch. Watson, Milton J. Weiss, David. Williamson, Evelyn. Wright, Francis P. Nay Pound. And 2 other obituaries. Richard Whitmer, the former longtime leader of health insurance giant Blue Cross Blue Shield of Michigan and father of Governor Gretchen Whitmer, has died, the governor's office announced Tuesday. He was 85. And 2-time Grammy Award-winning reggae drummer Sly Dunbar, who fueled countless tracks from Bob Marley to Bob Dylan and was one half of the influential reggae rhythm section. Sly and Robbie has died. He was 73. If you need further information on any of these names, please call us at 716-821-5555. That's 716-821-5555. Larry?
Thank you, Linda. Royal Stars, happy birthday for Wednesday, January 28, 2026. You have strong views about what is right and wrong. You're objective, persuasive, and compassionate. This year it's time to socialize and enjoy life because your creativity and zest for life are at a pinnacle. The stars show the kind of day you'll have. 5 dynamic, 4 positive, 3 average, 2 so-so, 1 difficult. Aries, 4 stars. Today, you're keen to talk to relatives, siblings, neighbors, and daily contacts. You have something to say, and you want to be heard. Tonight, discussions. Taurus, 4 stars. You are the financial wizard of the zodiac, and today it behooves you to know that it's a great money day. Tonight, maintain your belongings. Gemini, 5 stars. This is a fantastic day for your sign because the moon is in jeopardy. Gemini, which right off the bat gives you a slight advantage over all the other signs. Tonight, you're in charge. Cancer, 4 stars. If you're dealing with financial matters related to shared property like inheritances, debt, taxes, or anything that is jointly held, this is the perfect day for these discussions. Tonight, enjoy privacy. Leo, 5 stars. Today, your dealings with those who are closest to you, partners, spouses, and dear friends, are loving and warm. Conversations will be mutually beneficial. Tonight, be friendly. Virgo, 4 stars. This is an excellent day for productivity, which means you can get a lot done and enjoy doing so. Also, it's a great day for your health. Tonight, you are noticed. Libra, 5 stars. You are a sociable sign, and this is a sociable day. A happy pairing indeed. Accept invitations to see others. Tonight, learn something. Scorpio, 4 stars. Use today to put out some energy to make your home look more attractive. This will please you. Then invite someone over because it's a great day to entertain. Tonight, check your finances. Sagittarius, 5 stars. Writers, salespeople, and those of you who teach, act, or market can make use of today's blessings. You're in the zone. Tonight, listen. Capricorn, 5 stars. Show me the money. This is an extremely positive day for any kind of financial negotiation. Whatever you do will favor you. Tonight, work to get better organized. Aquarius, 5 stars. Today, 5 planets are in your sign. That's considerable. Better yet, 3 of them are dancing beautifully with the moon, which means everyone loves you. Tonight, explore your creativity. Pisces, 4 stars. This is a gentle, relaxing, and laid-back day. Enjoy quiet time at home if you can swing this. Tonight, relax at home.
Thank you, Larry. Hints from Heloise help with removing calcium scale deposits. Dear Heloise, I'm hoping you can help with my problem. My shower door frame has calcium scale in places, and the popular calcium and lime spray remover says do not use on anodized aluminum. Do you have any hints on how to remove these deposits without doing any damage? Thank you, from John. John, I recommend that you speak to someone at a hardware store concerning your calcium buildup in your shower. There are a number of products on the market that can do the job, but I know of no home care solution that can safely remove calcium buildup. No matter what product you choose, be sure to wear safety gloves that are thick to protect your hands from chemical burns. Enlarge it. Dear Heloise, I follow your column in the Winchester Star as I travel around the country. My hint is about trying to read tiny print. Often magnifying glasses just don't do the trick, so I grab my cell phone and use the camera to enlarge it, or I take a picture of it and enlarge the image, whichever suits the situation the best. I hope this helps someone else. Best wishes. That's from Diane. A safer way to polish furniture. Lana D. Dear Heloise, Lana D. in Peabody, Massachusetts wrote to say that she uses spray polish or cleaner on her wood furniture. Over time, the spray polish will dull the highlights in the wood grain or make them disappear. Fire department experts also say that polish on furniture makes fires burn hotter and makes them more difficult to put out. Use a high-quality automobile paste wax as a replacement for furniture wax. Clean the wood furniture with warm water and mild detergent, rinse thoroughly, and let dry for 24 hours. On damaged areas, use a touch-up stick that is available at most hardware stores. Let dry for 24 hours as well. Apply a thin coat of premium automobile paste wax and hand buff until shiny. You can do it twice if you're picky. You'll never have to wax the furniture again. Use the damp dust cloth to remove dust and spills. From Tony E. Repurposed dryer sheets. Dear Heloise, I repurposed the dryer sheets by placing them inside footwear. They work well by eliminating foul odors, and your wife will thank you. I love reading your column every day in the Inland Valley Daily Bulletin. That's from DG. And lockbox hint. Dear Heloise, a reader mentioned that they attached a lockbox to their front door, then gave the code to 911 when they were called. Many municipalities' fire departments have an internal department that will supply a lockbox. This might cost a small fee. They will place it in an obvious location, and the code is then associated with the premises through their computer dispatch system. This code is made available to the fire department, medical personnel, and the police so that they can enter the premises if necessary. If a 911 call is placed to the residence, it automatically comes up for the dispatcher so that the dispatcher can advise the responding units. Anyone interested in this feature should definitely reach out to their local fire department to see if it's available. And that's from Andy M. Larry?
Thank you, Linda. From the Political Notebook, Carney stands firm on Davos remarks. Toronto. Canadian Prime Minister Mark Carney said Tuesday he told President Trump that he meant what he said in his speech at Davos and told him Canada plans to diversify away from the United States with a dozen new trade deals. Carney rolled his eyes and rejected U.S. Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent's contention to Fox News that he aggressively walked back his comments at the World Economic Forum during a phone call with Trump on Monday. To be absolutely clear, and I said this to the president, I meant what I said in Davos, Carney told reporters as he arrived for a cabinet meeting in the capital, Ottawa. Canada was the first country to understand the change in U.S. trade policy that he initiated, and were responding to that. In Davos, at the World Economic Forum last week, Carney condemned economic coercion by great powers on smaller countries without mentioning Trump's name. The Prime Minister received widespread praise and attention for his remarks, upstaging Trump at the gathering. Trump threatened this past weekend to impose a 100% tariff on goods imported from Canada if he went ahead with a trade deal with Beijing. Carney said Trump called him. I explained to him that our arrangement with China, I explained to him what we were doing. 12 new deals, 4 continents in 6 months, Carney said. He was impressed. Carney plans to diversify trade away from dependence on the U.S., which takes more than 75% of Canada's exports.
Thank you, Larry. You're listening to a reading of articles from the Buffalo News for Wednesday, January 28th on your Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service. We'll return for more readings after this short break. Your readers today are
Larry Beenan
and Linda Ranella.
If you or people you know shop at any of the Dash's supermarkets, please save Dash's register tapes for radio reading. Our agency receives $2 for every $100 in Dash's register tapes. Radio Reading has raised thousands of dollars so far. Anyone can drop off their Dash's tapes to the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service at 1199 Harlem Road, Cheektowaga, between William and Clinton Streets. Or Dash's tapes can be mailed to the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service at 1199 Harlem Road, Cheektowaga, New York, 14227. Any questions on Dash's tapes for radio reading? Call us at 716-821-5555, and thanks for caring.
We'll continue now with our reading of articles from today's Buffalo News. Your readers are
Linda Ranella.
and Larry Beenan.
On to some local and regional news. Buffalo is pushing forward on Erie Basin Marina deal. Sure, turn the page, Linda. Buffalo may be covered in snow and dealing with freezing temperatures, but many in City Hall leadership have boating on their minds. That's because they have to get a new operator for the Erie Basin Marina and adjacent restaurant properties in place in time to serve boaters and the waterfront visitors this summer, with many slip holders already calling the city looking to secure their spots. And they have hit several snags along the way, with questions from Comptroller Barbara Miller Williams' office, continuing concerns from some Common Council members, and the threat of a lawsuit from a previous tenant of the restaurant space. Still, Fillmore District Council member Mitchell Nowakowski, whose district includes the marina, remains confident that the city-owned amenities will be open by the time the first boats are set to hit the water. The city is on firm legal ground moving forward, and concerns and his colleagues have raised have already been discussed and have solutions, he added. We've all been heard, he said. We're all on the same page. There's no need for confusion. Nowakowski and city officials have pushed for a new operator in recent years following the expiration of the contract with the former operator, Smith Boys, which ended before the 2024 boating season. They continued on one-year contracts for the past 2 years, despite a push from Nowakowski to get a new contractor last year following a series of audits that showed the company had paid the city less than $1,000 over an 8-year period covered by an audit and complaints from boaters. Former Mayor Christopher Scanlon's administration put out a request for qualifications in November, seeking a new operator for both the adjacent restaurant spaces that formerly hosted William K's, The Hatch, and Sully's and the Marina. In late December, the city selected John Nash, a former Smith Boys employee who ran day-to-day operations at the marina for the company, to be the new operator. He is partnering with Jason Davidson, who runs the Liberty Hound and Terrace at Delaware Park, 2 city-owned properties, to run the restaurant operations. Mayor Sean Ryan's administration is sticking with the operators selected through the RFQ process and is keeping a basic framework of the agreement, but is tweaking some of the terms. Deputy Mayor Benjamin Swanekamp said Tuesday during the Council Finance Committee meeting that the city will increase the frequency of audits from biannual to an annual basis and is increasing the percentage of revenues paid to the city in future years. We really tried to punch this out as best we could with the core goal in mind of ensuring this place can be open for the boating season, Swanekamp said. We have a very narrow timeline that is rapidly coming at us. Staff from the Comptroller's office voiced concern over the potential for further lack of oversight on the marina contracts after uncovering issues with reporting and compliance of to the contract with the former operators. Sam Bruno, an auditor with the Comptroller's office, said officials there would like to review any contracts and offer input into the financial controls detailed within before the council votes on approval. In addition, Avita Applewhite and her Evelina's Kitchen were operating out of William K. space when the contract with the former restaurant operator, Angelo Canna Jr., was nullified last year. She also applied for requests for proposals process but was not selected. At a meeting earlier this month and in the document she shared with the news, Applewhite has accused the city of steering the bid to the selected operators, and she says the city illegally evicted her from the space that she was subleasing from Cana. City officials from both the previous and current mayoral administrations dispute Applewhite's account and have said that while it is unfortunate she believes she could continue to operate under the agreement with Cana, his lease did not allow for unapproved subleases and the termination clause in his contract was unilateral. Applewhite declined to comment after the meeting, as did Cana when reached by phone. But restaurateur Mark Supples, who's been advising Applewhite, said their fight with the city is not over. At a meeting earlier this month, he said he would report the city to the State Attorney General's office, and he called on the city to restart the RFQ process from the beginning. He said he is prepared to pursue legal action if the city does not relent. I hate to use the law as a cudgel, but sometimes government forces you to, Supples said. Still, Nowakowski said he will push forward and hopes to bring the contract up for a vote at the next week's council meeting. I'm not going to ever allow myself or the city of Buffalo to be threatened with a frivolous lawsuit that actually has no basis at all to prohibit all the work that we've done, he said. Larry?
Thank you, Linda. Materion sues NFTA to block planned LaSalle Metro project. The owner of a precious metal refining facility adjacent to the LaSalle Metro rail station site in Buffalo is suing the Niagara Frontier Transportation Authority to prevent a proposed redevelopment of the station and surrounding property from hindering its own business. Materion Advanced Materials Technologies and Services, a division of Mayfield Heights, Ohio-based Materion Corp., is asking a state Supreme Court judge to overturn the NFTA's approval of a proposed redevelopment of the station and surrounding area because it would interfere with its ability to maintain its own property. It says the agency failed to conduct a complete environmental review under state law, including the impact on Materion's facility, which employs 230. NFTA never discussed the environmental impacts of the project, let alone identified the relevant areas of environmental concern, took a hard look at them, or made a reasoned elaboration of the basis for issuing the NFTA approval, the suit said. A Materion spokesman said Tuesday that the company fully supports the LaSalle Station project and has tried to work closely with the NFTA and the city for the last several years. We filed this petition to ensure that the NFTA and Albanese comply with the applicable environmental laws, he said. We trust that the environmental review process will help minimize impacts on Materion. NFTA spokeswoman Helen Tedros said the agency rejects the claims and will address Materion's concern in future discussions between attorneys. The lawsuit also names Albanese Organization, the proposed developer for the 11-acre project site. The company was selected by the NFTA and the city after a request for proposals in May 2024 for re-envision the underused properties to create a transit-oriented mixed-use development. The site consists of 7 properties beginning at 3000 Main Street, with about half owned by the NFTA and half by the city and Buffalo Urban Renewal Agency. It includes the rail station, park and ride facilities, and an existing daycare facility, which is surrounded by Shoshone Park, a Rails to Trails recreational path, and businesses on Main Street, including Materion. Albanese plans to demolish the station, which will be rebuilt to construct 2 6-story buildings and 1 5-story building with 318 affordable apartments plus 16 townhomes, a daycare center, retail space, a public plaza, community space, and a bicycle hub. It will be funded largely by the state and a commercial mortgage, and Albanese has identified potential tenants and partners. Materion, whose predecessor was Williams Advanced Materials, owns the complex at 2948 and 2978 Main, as well as 427 Beard, while the NFTA owns 3000 and 3030 Main and 447 Beard. According to the lawsuit, the eastern portion of the Materion facility is less than 10 feet from the property line of the 3000 Main Street. That leaves no access space between buildings and property boundary. As a result, Materion routinely has to use that parcel to conduct maintenance and repairs on its own building under access agreements granted by the NFTA. The RFP issued by the NFTA and the city specified that a 90-foot by 491-foot strip of 3000 Main Street would be excluded from any project as a buffer to allow Materion continued access. But the Albanese proposal, which was accepted by the NFTA and the city, plans to use that buffer space with parking, landscaping, and green space. Materion also notes that the project will require substantial land preparations, including the removal of existing surface parking and structures, as well as excavation for foundation and site preparation, installation of utilities, and landscaping, which could have a significant and adverse impact on the Materion facility. and the project will create new impervious surfaces and result in new stormwater flows which may have the potential to impact the Materion facility if not properly mitigated, as well as that of Shoshone Park. Additionally, Materion noted that a site analysis within the RFP had identified potential site challenges, including its history as a coal yard, lumber yard, and railroad, as well as 2 gas stations that used to exist on part of the land. It recommended a more extensive site analysis. There may be other environmental or barriers to development, the lawsuit said.
Thank you, Larry. Made in America store to close doors in Elma. The Made in America store in Elma will close 6 months after the death of owner Mark Andel. The store said it would liquidate and sell the building that now houses its store at 1000 West Maple Court and close its doors, but it holds out hope that the concept will return in another form. The owners have made the difficult decision to sell the building in which the Made in America store is currently located, the store said in a Facebook post. This was not an easy decision. Our store has been a labor of love for our family and a source of pride for our community, and we are deeply grateful for the unwavering support we have received over the years. While the physical building will be sold, the Made in America name, mission, and legacy will remain intact, it said. This is not a goodbye, but rather a strategic restructuring that allows us to thoughtfully plan for the future. It is our sincerest intention to reopen a Made in America store at a new location and time when circumstances allow, so we can continue to serve customers who believe in American-made products and American jobs, the Post said. Andel's first company, General Welding and Fabricating, founded in 1989, closed last year. It began selling off its inventory and supplies in July, shortly after Andel died, July 15th. Made in America store has always stood for community, quality, pride, and purpose. Those values are not going away, the company wrote. We look forward to carrying this legacy forward and serving future generations of customers who share our commitment to American-made products. The store has begun liquidation sales. Larry?
Thank you, Linda. Marine land mammals will not be euthanized. A group of 34 marine mammals that previously entertained crowds at Marineland have escaped a death sentence and may have a new lease on life in the United States. Marineland will not euthanize the 30 beluga whales and 4 dolphins that had once performed at the Niagara Falls, Ontario Aquatic Park, and has instead received conditional approval to export the animals to facilities in the United States. Officials from the now closed tourist site met with Fisheries Minister Joanne Thompson Monday about the proposal, which involves moving the animals to 4 institutions in the United States. It was a constructive meeting, and I provided conditional approval for export permits. I will issue the final permits once final requirement information is received by Marineland, she wrote in a statement released on Instagram. My focus throughout has been the best interest of the whales, and that is what has guided this decision. Marineland had initially tried selling the whales to Shimileong Ocean Kingdom in Zhuhai, China, but its request for export permits was denied by the Canadian government because the animals would continue living in captivity if they were sent there. A 2019 Canadian law bans the breeding of captive whales and dolphins as well as their use for entertainment. Marineland wants to send the whales and dolphins to Georgia Aquarium, Mystic Aquarium, Shedd Aquarium, and a SeaWorld location according to the Canadian Broadcasting Association. The marine park had said it was running out of money to feed and care for the animals and said it would euthanize the aquatic animals if it did not receive a financial bailout. 20 whales, including 1 killer whale and 19 belugas, have died at Marineland since 2019, according to Canadian reports. Animal Justice, an animal rights organization in Canada, called the news disappointing in a statement. The key question is whether these animals will be placed back into breeding programs, something Canada rightfully chose to prohibit, said Camille Labchuk, Executive Director of Animal Justice. This generation of belugas and dolphins must be the last in captivity. Any breeding would perpetuate the cruelty of keeping whales in miserable tanks, which Canadian law now bans, she said. Any export permits must permanently and verifiably restrict the U.S. aquariums from breeding the animals. The group urged the Canadian government to consider sending at least some of the animals to the Whale Sanctuary Project in Nova Scotia, a 100-acre sanctuary off the Canadian coast. The sanctuary was recently approved by the Nova Scotia government. In December, France began the process of facilitating a transfer of 2 of its captive orca whales to the sanctuary. Marineland spent decades raking in millions of dollars by exploiting whales and dolphins. Once Canada outlawed that cruel business, it was clear that the park would one day close, Labchuk said. It's appalling that Marineland hasn't set aside even a fraction of their profits to retire these whales to a sanctuary, giving them a second chance after the misery of being confined to a tank for their entire lives, she said. Marineland was once a popular destination for families who traveled from far and wide to watch whales and dolphins perform tricks at the park, delighting at getting splashed by the water from their tanks. The park's memorable campaign, with its Everyone Loves Marineland jingle, captured the attention of Western New Yorkers. But over time, as animal rights activists campaigned against the conditions in which the animals were kept and pushed for the animals' freedom, the movement caught on with the mainstream and Marineland fell out of favor. The 1993 film Free Willy, about a captive killer whale, helped turn the tide of public sentiment against animals in captivity, and did a 2013 documentary, Blackfish, about an orca held by SeaWorld.
Thank you, Larry. You're listening to a reading of today's Buffalo News on your Niagara Frontier Radio reading service. The time is 10:17. On to sports. One short and then the next article. If you're into tennis, on yesterday, Jessica Pegula defeated Anisimova in the quarterfinals of the Australian Open, and Thursday she is scheduled for the semifinals against Rybakina. Now comes the article. The Olympics, ICE agents to provide security at the Games. U.S. Immigration and Customs Enforcement agents will have a security role during the upcoming Milan Cortina Winter Games, according to information shared with local media by sources at the U.S. Embassy in Rome. The Associated Press independently confirmed the information with 2 officials at the embassy. The officials who confirmed ICE participation on Tuesday said that federal ICE agents would support diplomatic security details and would not run any immigration enforcement operations. During previous Olympics, several federal agencies have supported security for U.S. diplomats, including the investigative component of ICE called Homeland Security Investigations, HSI. The official said they could not be named because they were not authorized to speak publicly. HSI has a global footprint, and it's common for the Department of Homeland Security, DHS, to provide security support at major international events. The State Department's Diplomatic Security Service does this as well, routinely supporting events like the Olympics. The use of U.S. law enforcement agencies in these contexts isn't unusual. During the 2016 Rio Olympics, the Transportation Security Administration deployed officers to assist with airport screening due to surge in visitors and a potential threat of attacks. Citing images of masked ICE agents that have dominated coverage of unrest in Minneapolis, Milan Mayor Giuseppe Sala said that ICE would not be welcome in his city, which is hosting most ICE sports during the February 6 to 22nd Winter Games. This is a militia that kills, a militia that enters into the homes of people, signing their own permission slips. It is clear they are not welcome in Milan, without a doubt, Sala told RTL Radio 102 before ICE's deployment to the Games was confirmed. ICE's role has been reported over the weekend by the Italian daily Il Fatto Quotidiano, prompting conflicting statements from Italian authorities who did not want to appear to confirm the agency's role. Italian Interior Minister Matteo Piandosi said Saturday he had not received confirmation of ICE's deployment, but added that I don't see what the problem would be, the news agency ANSA reported. The Interior Ministry on Tuesday repeated that the U.S. has not confirmed the makeup of its security detail, but insisted that at the moment there are no indications that ICE USA will act as an escort to the American delegation. The confirmation of ICE's role in Olympic security comes after RIA State TV aired video Sunday of ICE agents threatening to break the glass on a vehicle of the RAI crew reporting in Minneapolis, where ICE operations have sparked mass demonstrations. Federal officers in Minneapolis have shot and killed two 37-year-old protesters this month. Larry?
Thank you, Linda. Turning to the Sabres, and last night the Sabres beat the hated Toronto Maple Leafs 7-4. The article here about previous stuff. Hang 10 again? Sittler doesn't think it's a possibility. NHL's single-game scoring record has stood the test of time. Toronto, limiting the Ruff, made what some would consider a stunning admission in enemy territory. I hate to say this, but I was a Leafs fan, Ruff said Tuesday morning at Scotiabank Arena after the Buffalo Sabres morning skate. The statement by the Sabres head coach requires some context. Ruff publicly owned up to his Maple Leafs fandom on the morning the franchise prepared to honor Darryl Sittler and the 50th anniversary of his 10-point game on February 7th, 1976, ahead of the Maple Leafs' 7 p.m. face-off against the Sabres, which, as I mentioned, the Leafs lost. It's the last Maple Leafs home game before the Olympic break, which begins February 6. Ruff, 65, is old enough to remember watching the historic game and each of Sittler's 10 points, a single-game NHL record that still stands. Sittler scored 6 goals and had 4 assists in an 11-4 win over the Boston Bruins at Maple Leaf Gardens in Toronto. It was one of the greatest hockey games way back when, Ruff said. He was one of my favorite players. I can go back and name Norm Ullman, Ron Ellis, all the different players way back when. But that was an unbelievable night for sure. As the NHL approaches the anniversary of Sittler's performance, there's the obvious question of whether that feat will ever be matched, particularly in the league's modern era. Sittler, speaking Tuesday morning, didn't think it will happen again. You do the stats and you see how many times 10 points is scored by one team, said Sittler, who raised his family in the Buffalo area after he retired from the NHL in 1985, and whose children attend Nichols School. Maybe one time a year, 10 goals in a game. In making his point, the Hockey Hall of Famer evoked 2 others, Wayne Gretzky and Mario Lemieux. Sittler watched a game in 1984 in which Gretzky reached the 8-point mark, but couldn't eclipse the plateau. When Gretzky and Lemieux didn't do it in the late 1980s and early 1990s, they got 8 points a couple of times, and that was the time I thought it was going to be broken, Sittler said. And I remember watching a game when Gretzky was playing the Minnesota North Stars. He had 8 points at the end of the second period, and Oilers coach Glenn Sather put him out there the whole time. He told me I was so tired I couldn't even move to try to get those 2 points. The fact that I did it in the Leaf uniform, it's been 50 years, and we're celebrating this, it's awesome. Gretzky and Lemieux are 2 of 13 players who have notched 8-point games, but the closest any player has come to Sittler's single-game record in the NHL's modern era, from 2000 to the present, is Edmonton's Sam Gagner, who scored 4 goals and 4 assists in an 8-4 win February 2nd, 2012 against the Chicago Blackhawks. The highest single-game points total for the Sabres, Gilbert Perreault, who scored 7 points, 2 goals, 5 assists, February 1st, 1976, in a 9-5 win against the California Golden Seals. The most recent single-game points best for the Sabres came from Tage Thompson, who scored 6 points, 5 goals, 1 assist, on December 7th, 2022, in a 9-4 win over the Columbus Blue Jackets in Columbus. Dave Andreychuk also had a 6-point night, 5 goals, and 1 assist, February 6, 1986, in an 8-6 win over the Boston Bruins at Boston Garden. A quick poll of the Sabres and Maple Leafs locker rooms Tuesday morning found both skepticism and hope for the thought of replacing Sittler's scoring accomplishment. Sabres wing Josh Doan doesn't think another point game by one player could happen. You look at how hard it is to get even 4 or 5 points in this league, and I think you've got a guy against you that's got over 5 points. You're making sure he's not getting more than that the rest of the night, Dolan said. The opponent doesn't want to be against the guy that gets 10 points, that's for sure. With that in mind, it made Thompson's 5-point night, 3 goals, 2 assists, January 15th, in a 5-3 win against the Montreal Canadiens even more impressive to Doan. Maple Leafs defenseman Morgan Rielly thought back to before he was born, he's 31 years old, and to before Sittler's landmark game. There's probably a time when people didn't think that would ever happen, Rielly said of Sittler's 10-point game, and he did it. I like to think that there's always an opportunity there to match those cool records and those achievements. As of right now, he's the only guy, so I think it's a great opportunity for our organization to acknowledge him and honor him tonight, not only for one game and one thing, but for what he's meant to this team, his history, and those years. Maple Leafs coach Craig Berube used his coaching perspective to explain why a 10-point game would be so difficult to do in today's NHL. The speed of the game is different, and there isn't the time or space on the ice that there was 50 years ago. The skating is different, and so is the defensive structure. Berube also pointed out the evolution of goaltending, which he said is elite compared to back then, and the skill level of players. Does Bobby McMahon think a 10-point night by a player could ever happen in the modern era? The Maple Leaf center would love to see it, but is realistic about the possibility. It would be less likely to happen now, McMahon said. It would be cool, but it seems like it's unlikely feat. The way that the game is going and how good the goalies are and how fast it is, it seems a hard one to do. Ruff, the admitted Maple Leafs fan, isn't shutting down the idea that it could happen. I think anything's possible, Ruff said. To say never is a long time. It's possible.
Thank you, Larry. 5 things, in his own words, 5 quotes over the years from Bill's Brady. The Buffalo Bills made it official. Joe Brady is the team's newest head coach. Brady, 36, joined the Bills staff as a quarterback's coach before working his way up to offensive coordinator. Here's a look at some things we've learned about Brady over the years. Coaching was always the goal. Brady attended William and Mary College, where he spent 4 years as wide receiver. At first he wanted to keep playing, but as reality sank in, that's when he turned his attention to coaching. When I realized I wasn't good enough to be a player, Brady said in 2023, no, I've always had a passion for this game of football. It means so much to me. It's not just a job. Like, I love football, and once I realized as a player in college that I wasn't very good, I had to realize that, hey, what am I going to do with it? And obviously my parents, paid some money for a nice degree that I didn't actually utilize, but once I got to that point, there's nothing I'd rather do besides coach football. 2, player involvement. Brady wants input from his players. He showed it as an offensive coordinator, holding weekly meetings to see what plays were resonating with his playmakers. The communication element to me is huge. It's critical, Brady said at training camp. It's not my offense, it's their offense, and they make it go. And if I just try to say, hey, everything is just so black and white, this is a way to do it, and don't get their feedback, sometimes as coaches we can draw things on the board, and it sounds like a great idea, but can they actually do it? We want to empower them. We want to give them ownership, and if we do that, we feel like they'll take it and run with it. So part of it is that we go with that communication. The less I'm talking in meetings, the better. When the quarterbacks and receivers are having the meetings and they're the ones communicating, that's when it's going to be the offense that we ultimately want to be. 3, true colors. When Brady was asked about being on the younger side as a coach, and a week after he was promoted to offensive coordinator, Brady said he wasn't hiding his age or his personality. Yeah, I think at the end of the day, you just got to be yourself, Brady said in 2023. I believe players are going to see authenticity or not. If I try to be something, if I'm a guy that's going to start yelling, but I'm not a yeller, they're going to see through that. But if I try to act like I'm the smartest person in the room when I know I'm not, they're going to see through that. And so to me, it's about them seeing my personality and knowing that, hey, this is who this guy is. I'm going to slur words. I'm going to stutter. I'm going to make mistakes, and I'm human. But hey, this is me. And I believe when people see that you're authentic and that you care and that you love for them and you want them to have success, then I believe that they're going to want to play for you. 4. Tied to the city. Brady has had high praise for Western New York. It's the greatest. Brady said in 2023, I wear shorts at every practice. I'm a South Florida guy, but I love the city of Buffalo. I like this place, means a lot to me. It means a lot to my family. Like just seeing the passion that the fans have, how much they want to win. Like I want that, you know? And so it's fun to be here in this organization and knowing that the fans, the city, the organization, all is aligned and wants the same exact thing. And so I'm grateful for the opportunity to be able to be part of that. And 5, planting Buffalo roots. While Brady is a South Florida native, he's excited that his kids, one son and one daughter, will be able to call Buffalo home. Fam is good, Brady said in December after his daughter was born. It was an interesting 24 hours, that's for sure. But we got 2 kids born in Buffalo, and so they'll be proud of that their whole life. Larry?
Thank you, Linda. A few short hockey things here. The Rangers retool starts with a rare trade. The New York Rangers sell off that general manager Chris Drury warned fans would be coming as part of a retooling process is now underway. They traded defenseman Carson Soucy to the crosstown rival New York Islanders on Monday in exchange for a third-round pick in this year's draft. None of Soucy's $3.25 million salary was retained. And more on Canucks injuries. The Vancouver Canucks added 2 more names to their extensive list of injured players, placing winger Brock Boeser and defenseman Zeev Boyum on injured reserve Monday after getting hurt in Sunday's 3-2 loss to the Pittsburgh Penguins. Boeser caught an elbow to the head from Pittsburgh's Brian Rust in the final seconds of the game. Rust was suspended for 3 games after a hearing on Tuesday. Boyum was hit in the face with a puck in the first period but returned wearing a bubble visor and finished with 15:41 of ice time. And around the rink, the Colorado Avalanche on Tuesday signed defenseman Sam Malinsky to a 4-year extension. The deal is reported to be worth $19 million. Malinsky, 27, has already set career highs with 21 assists. And Matthias Ekholm collected a hat trick as the Edmonton Oilers posted a 7-4 victory over the visiting Anaheim Ducks on Monday. Leon Draisaitl had 4 assists for the Oilers, while the Ducks' Mikael Granlund had 3 goals.
Thank you, Larry. You're listening to a reading of today's Buffalo News on your Niagara Frontier Radio reading service. The time is 10:33. Asking Eric, friend group sides with suspicious HOA president. Dear Eric, for the past 10 years, a core group of our homeowners association, as HOA, has been very close. We get together on weekends, have meals together, attend HOA events, and even go on vacations with each other. One member of our group is the HOA president and has held that position for more than 20 years. While the HOA board funded many improvements to our property initially, lately there's been a lack of activity in our common areas and infrastructure are deteriorating. There's almost no communication from our HOA board on property repairs or future projects. I addressed this lack of transparency with our HOA president many times over the years and offered my help to the HOA board to improve communication and transparency, but was dismissed. Since then, I helped organize a group of owners to address our concerns with the HOA board. Although some of our questions were answered, there still remains a lot of financial information that is unaccounted for. My questioning of HOA bylaws and procedures has caused a rift in our core group, and now certain friends have shunned me and blamed me for ruining the core group dynamics. I've been respectful and cordial when our group has gotten together, but it's not the same. Losing these long-term friendships has been hurtful and has bothered me for a while. However, I feel strongly about standing up for what's right, even if it costs friendships. Can you give me any advice on how to deal with this recent loss of friends? From Under Fire. Dear Under Fire, well, it can be really tough to rock the boat, especially when friendship and business are intermingled. However, your friends are blaming you for asking valid questions of someone who is mishandling funds and directly impacting your quality of life. Your friends care too much about the boat and not enough about the storm around them. Being right can be a cold comfort. You're going to need to grieve these friendships that have fallen to the wayside. You may feel anger, frustration, sadness, or other emotions. Talk to other friends who are not involved about the way you're feeling. Don't keep it bottled up. What you'll want is to reach a state where you can acknowledge that what happened wasn't right and you don't agree with what your friends did, but you're releasing the expectation that you can change it. Dear Eric, I've been married to my second husband for almost 5 years. We belong to a running club. a running group that is more about having beers together than actually running for fitness. Some of the female members have taken a liking to him. One started sending him text messages up to 5 times a day. He said he didn't know how to tell her not to message him, even though she'd asked if they could share a tent on a group trip that I wasn't going on. Every fall, our group has a camp out. Some of the things that take place are just not for me. As soon as it gets dark, everybody takes off all their clothes, stands around in a circle, goofing around and comparing each other, and then goes for a short run naked. I worked the weekend of the camp out and didn't go. When he got back, I asked him if he had participated in a naked run. He had, and he also won an activity that they do that involves running around naked with the sorry folks. And that he had won an activity that they do that involves running around naked with a trail of toilet paper that's on fire stuck to your butt. I was extremely hurt and felt like he disrespected our boundaries. Married men don't have that kind of fun when their wife isn't around, and women who have expressed interest are. He blamed me for working so many hours. Then he told me he's looking into seeing a therapist because he doesn't know why he keeps doing activities like this. Am I just being difficult for not having any pity for him from running from trouble? Dear running, I'm no runner, bad knees, but I don't think this is a running club, and it doesn't seem like you and your husband can't quite agree on what it is either. There are plenty of, let's say, eccentric clubs in the world, but if one's relationship to the club breaks the rules of a love relationship, then there's an issue. It makes sense for your husband to go to therapy. Separately, you both should look into couples counseling and have a conversation about what the ground rules and basic understandings of your marriage are. What are you expecting? What are you not getting? And what happens when the rules get broken? Right now, it seems like there's been some fudging around that's actually been agreed to. You'll both be happier with clarity. Larry?
Thank you, Linda.
Oh, dear. How do you follow
I used
that,
to
Larry?
run. I used to run, but never that way.
Oh, that's because we have cold weather up here, Larry.
That's what it is.
Oh.
Shooting scrambles Second Amendment politics for president. Prominent Republicans and gun rights advocates helped elicit a White House turnaround this week after bristling over the administration's characterization of Alex Pretty, the second person killed this month by federal officers in Minneapolis, is responsible for his own death because he lawfully possessed a weapon. The death produced no clear shifts on U.S. gun policy or policies, even as President Trump shuffles the lieutenants in charge of his militarized immigration crackdown. But important voices in Trump's coalition have called for a thorough investigation of Pretty's death, while also criticizing inconsistencies in some Republicans' Second Amendment statements. If the dynamic persists, it could give Republicans problems as Trump heads into a midterm election year with voters already growing skeptical of his overall immigration approach. The concern is acute enough that Trump's top spokeswoman sought Monday to reassert his brand as a staunch gun rights supporter. The president supports the Second Amendment rights of law-abiding American citizens absolutely. White House Press Secretary Carolyn Leavitt told reporters. Leavitt qualified that when you are bearing arms and confronted by law enforcement, you are raising the risk of being used forcefully against you. That still marked a retreat from the administration's previous messages about the shooting of Pretty. It came the same day the president dispatched border czar Tom Homan to Minnesota, seemingly elevating him over Homeland Security Secretary Kristi Noem and Border Patrol Chief Greg Bovino, who had been in charge in Minneapolis. Within hours of Pretty's death on Saturday, Bovino suggested Pretty wanted to massacre law enforcement, and Noem and Pretty was brandishing a weapon and acted violently toward officers. I don't know of any peaceful protesters that show up with a gun and ammunition rather than a sign, Noem said. White House Deputy Chief of Staff Stephen Miller, an architect of Trump's mass deportation effort, went further on X, declaring Pretty an assassin. Bystander videos contradicted each claim, instead showing Pretty holding a cell phone and helping a woman who had been pepper sprayed by a federal officer. Within seconds, Purdy was sprayed too and taken to the ground by multiple officers. No video disclosed thus far has shown him upholstering his concealed weapon, which he had a Minnesota permit to carry. It appeared that one officer took Purdy's gun and walked away with it just before shots began. As multiple videos went viral online and on television, Vice President Vance reposted Miller's assessments, while Trump shared an alleged photo of the gunman's gun loaded with 2 additional full magazines. On Tuesday, Trump was asked if he agreed with Miller's comment describing Purdy as an assassin, and answered no, but he added that protesters can't have guns and said he wants the death investigated. "You can't walk in with guns, you just can't," Trump told reporters on the White House lawn before departing for a trip to Iowa. The National Rifle Association, which has backed Trump 3 times, released a statement that began by casting blame on the Minnesota Democrats it accused of stoking protests. But the group lashed out after a federal prosecutor in California said on X that if you approach law enforcement with a gun, there is a high likelihood that you will be legally justified in shooting you. That analysis, the NRA said, is dangerous and wrong. FBI Director Kash Patel magnified the blowback Sunday on Fox News Sunday Morning Futures with Maria Bartiromo. "No one," Patel said, "can bring a firearm loaded with multiple magazines to any sort of protest that you want. It's that simple." Eric Pratt, Vice President of Gun Owners of America, was incredulous. "I have attended protest rallies while armed, and no one got injured," he said on CNN. Conservative officials around the country made the same connection between the First and Second Amendments. Showing up at a protest is very American. Showing up with a weapon is very American, State Representative Jerry Faison, who leads the GOP caucus in Tennessee, said on X. Trump's first-term Vice President, Mike Pence, called for a full and transparent investigation of this officer involved in shooting. Liberals, conservatives, and nonpartisan experts noted how the administration's response differed from past conservative positions involving protests and weapons. Multiple Trump supporters were found to have weapons during the January 6, 2021 attack on the U.S. Capitol. Trump issued blanket pardons to all of them. Republicans were critical of in 2020 when Mark and Patricia McCloskey had to pay fines after pointing guns at protesters who marched through their St. Louis neighborhood after the police killing of George Floyd in Minneapolis. And then there's Kyle Rittenhouse, a counter-protester acquitted after fatally shooting 2 men and injuring another in Kenosha, Wisconsin during the post-Floyd protests. You remember Kyle Rittenhouse and how he was made a hero on the right. Trey Gowdy, a Republican former congressman and attorney for Trump during one of his first-term impeachments. Alex Purdy's firearm was never being carried. Alex Purdy's firearm was being lawfully carried. He never brandished it. Adam Winkler, a UCLA law professor who studied the history of the gun debate, said the fallout shows how tribal we've become. Republicans spent years talking about the Second Amendment as a means to fight government tyranny, he said. The moment someone who's thought to be from the left, they abandoned that principled stance, Winkler said. Meanwhile, Democrats who have criticized open and concealed carry laws for years, Winkler added, are not amplifying that position after Purdy's death. The blowback against the administration from core Trump supporters comes as Republicans are trying to protect their threadbare majority in the U.S. House and face several competitive Senate races. Perhaps reflecting the stakes, GOP staff and campaign aides were reticent Monday to talk about the issue at all. The House Republican campaign chairman, Representative Richard Hudson of North Carolina, is sponsoring the GOP's most significant gun legislation of this congressional term, a proposal to make state concealed carry permits reciprocal across all states. The bill cleared the House Judiciary Committee last fall. Asked Monday whether Purdy's death and the Minneapolis protests might alter debate, an aide to Speaker Mike Johnson did not offer any update on the bill's prospects. Gun rights advocates have notched many legislative victories in Republican-controlled state houses in recent decades, from rolling back gun-free zones around schools and churches to expanding gun possession rights in schools, on university campuses, and in other public spaces. William Sack, legal director of the Second Amendment Foundation, said he was surprised and disappointed by the administration's initial statements following the Preddy shooting. Trump's vacillating, he said, is very likely to cost them dearly with the core of a constituency they count on.
Thank you, Larry. Analysis from the Associated Press. Trump's use of AI images pushes boundaries, eroding public trust. The Trump administration has not shied away from sharing AI-generated imagery online, embracing cartoon-like visuals and memes and promoting them on official White House channels. But an edited and realistic image of civil rights attorney Nakima Levy Armstrong in tears after being arrested is raising new alarms about how the administration is blurring the lines between what is real and what is fake. Homeland Security Secretary Kristi Noem's account posted the original image from Levy Armstrong's arrest before the official White House account posted an altered image that showed her crying. The doctored picture is part of a deluge of AI-edited imagery that has been shared across the political spectrum since the fatal shootings of Renee Good and Alex Preddy by U.S. Border Patrol officers in Minneapolis. However, the White House use of artificial intelligence has troubled misinformation experts who fear the spreading of AI-generated or edited images erodes public perception of the truth and sows distrust. In response to criticism of the edited image of Levy Armstrong, the White House officials doubled down on the post, with Deputy Communications Director Kaylin Dorr writing on X that the memes will continue. White House Deputy Press Secretary Abigail Jackson also shared a post mocking the criticism. David Rand, a professor of information science at Cornell University, says calling the altered image a meme certainly seems like an attempt to cast it as a joke or humorous post like their prior cartoons. This presumably aims to shield them from criticism for posting manipulated media. He said the purpose of sharing the altered arrest image seems much more ambiguous than the cartoonish images the administration has shared in the past. Memes have always carried layered messages that are funny or informative to people who understand them, but indecipherable to outsiders. AI-enhanced or edited imagery is just the latest tool the White House uses to engage the segment of Trump's base that spends a lot of time online, said Zach Henry, a Republican communications consultant who founded Total Virality, an influencer marketing firm. People who are terminally online will see it and instantly recognize it as a meme, he said. Your grandparents may see it and not understand the meme, but because it looks real, it leads them to ask their kids or grandkids about it. All the better if it prompts a fierce reaction, which helps it go viral, said Henry, who generally praised the work of the White House social media team. The creation and dissemination of altered images, especially when they are shared by credible sources, crystallizes an idea of what's happening instead of showing what is actually happening, said Michael Spikes, a professor at Northwestern University and news media literacy researcher. The government should be a place where you can trust the information, where you can say it's accurate because they have a responsibility to do so, he said. By sharing this kind of content and creating this kind of content, it is eroding the trust. And even though I've always kind of skeptical of the term trust, but the trust we should have in our federal government to give us accurate, verified information, it's a real loss, and that really worries me a lot. Spike said he's already seized the institutional crisis around distrust in news organizations and higher education, and feels this behavior from official channels inflames those issues. Ramesh Srivastava, a professor at UCLA and a host of the Utopias podcast, said many people are now questioning where they can turn to for trustable information. AI systems are only going to exacerbate, amplify, and accelerate these problems of an absence of trust, an absence of even understanding what might be considered reality or truth or evidence, he said. Srinivasan said he feels the White House and other officials sharing AI-generated content not only invites everyday people to continue to post similar content, but also grants permission to others who are in position of credibility and power, like policymakers, to share unlabeled synthetic content. He added that given that social media platforms tend to algorithmically privilege extreme and conspiratorial content, which AI generation tools can create with ease, we've got a big set of challenges on our hands. An influx of AI-generated videos related to immigration and customs enforcement action, protests and interactions with citizens had already been proliferating on social media. After Renee Good was shot by an ICE officer when she was in her car, several AI-generated videos began circulating of women driving away from ICE officers who told them to stop. There were also many fabricated videos circulating of immigration raids and of people confronting ICE officers, often yelling at them or throwing food in their faces. Jeremy Carasso, a content creator who specializes in media literacy and debunking viral AI videos, said the bulk of these videos is likely coming from accounts that are engagement farming or looking to capitalize on clicks by generating content with popular keywords and search items like ICE. But he also said the videos are getting views from people who oppose ICE and DHS and could be watching them as fan fiction or engaging in wishful thinking, hoping that they're seeing a real pushback against the organizations and their officers. Still, Carasso also believes that most viewers can't tell if what they're watching is fake and questions whether they would know what's real or not when it actually matters, like when the stakes are a lot higher. Even when there are blatant signs of AI generation, like street signs with gibberish on them or other obvious errors, only in the best case scenario would a viewer be savvy enough or be paying enough attention to register the use of AI. The issue is, of course, not limited to news surrounding immigration enforcement and protests. Fabricated and misrepresented images following the capture of deposed Venezuelan leader Nicolas Maduro exploded online earlier this month. Experts, including Carasso, think the spread of AI-generated political content will only become more commonplace. It's going to be an issue forever now, he said. I don't think people understand how bad this is. Larry?
Thank you, Linda. U.S. growth rate declines. Population estimates show immigration crackdown led to drop. Orlando, Florida. President Donald Trump's crackdown on immigration contributed to a year-to-year drop in the nation's growth rate as the U.S. population reached nearly 342 million people in 2025, according to population estimates released Tuesday by the U.S. Census Bureau. The 0.5 growth rate for 2025 was a sharp drop from 2024's almost 1% growth rate, which was the highest in 2 decades and was fueled by immigration. The 2024 estimates put the U.S. population at 340 million people. Immigration increased by almost 1.3 million people last year compared with 2024's increase of almost 2.8 million people. If trends continue, annual gain from immigrants by mid-2026 will drop to only 321,000 people, according to the Census Bureau, whose estimates do not distinguish between legal and illegal immigration. In the past 125 years, the lowest growth rate was in 2021, during the height of the COVID-19 pandemic, when the U.S. population grew by just 0.16%. Or 522,000 people, and immigration increased by just 376,000 people because of travel restrictions into the U.S. Before the lowest growth rate then was just under 0.5% in 1919 at the height of the Spanish flu. Births outnumbered deaths last year by 519,000 people. While higher than the pandemic-era low at the beginning of the decade, the natural increase was dramatically smaller than in the 2000s, when it ranged from 1.6 million and 1.9 million people. The immigration drop dented growth in several states that traditionally are immigrant targets. California had a net population loss of 9,500 people in 2025, a stark change from the previous year when it gained 233,000 residents. You've been listening to a reading of articles and features from the Buffalo News for Wednesday, January 28th, 2026. We read the Buffalo News live on weekday and Sunday mornings at 9 a.m. and rebroadcast at 4 p.m. For more information, call 716-821-5555. Your readers today have been
Linda Ranella.
and Larry Beenan. Thank you for listening, and please continue to stay safe.
If you or someone you know is having thoughts of suicide or experiencing a mental health or substance use crisis, 988 provides direct connection to free, confidential, and compassionate support. When you call, text, or chat 988, you'll be quickly connected to trained crisis counselors who will listen to your concerns, provide support, and connect you to additional resources if needed. There is hope. The Lifeline works. You are not alone in crisis. For 24/7 confidential support, just call, text, or chat 988. Radio Reading mails out a large print program schedule to our listeners every other month. If you have not received a Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service large print program schedule in the mail, please call us at 716-821-5555. We will make sure that you receive one every other month. A Braille version of the schedule is also available upon request. Our number again is 716-821-5555. If you're listening to this publication online, you're probably using our website, a podcast player like Spotify or iTunes, a streaming service like Siro, or a smart speaker. Did you know that we now have a dedicated app that can be downloaded to any mobile device, like a smartphone or tablet, for free? App users can conveniently access our live stream and any episode of our podcast easier than ever. To download the app, just type NFRRS in the search window in the Apple App Store or in the Google Play Store. Contact us anytime if you have any questions by calling 716-821-5555, extension 5. Thank you. following program is intended for listeners who are blind, have low vision,